Okay, welcome to Hopeifiers. I'm the acapellist, and with me is Brother Scott Sweetman. How are you today, Brother Scott?
I am great. A little hot under the collar, but I think everyone in Southern Alberta is feeling that way right now.
Hey, speaking of hot under the collar, did you notice my fashion accessory? Did you check
I
that out?
did,
This
my friend.
ascot? Let
It's
me tell
looking good.
our viewers, I was trying to get something around my neck. I had this desire to have something around my neck. In the winter, I had this big scarf and it was wrapped all around, and I kind of tucked it in my pants. It was wonderful, wrapped all around the front of me. But in the summer, too hot. So I was telling my brother Scott here, I have this issue. And he said, oh, you need an ascot. And this is from Brother Scott Sweetman, a beautiful, beautiful ascot that I've just been, the other one, the paisley one, I thought, oh, I'm never going to wear another ascot. After I had that one on, it's so nice. And then I put this on. Oh, yeah, this one's quite nice too. I love this. So
That
anyways,
one's quite a bit older.
This one is?
That's
Tell me
vintage.
how old is this?
At least as old as I am. I bought it in a vintage store. So I just, yesterday was my 56th birthday. So it's about that vintage, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
And how about the paisley one? How old's that one?
20 years. Bought it when I was in Japan. Yeah. So
yeah. Well, this is
there.
I love this. Thank you.
Well,
it's like,
but, you know,
a hug. It's like a hug around your neck.
It is. Yeah. And something that we really learned when I started traveling outside of North America is a lot of other cultures use scarves very intelligently to manage their temperature. And in Canada, North America, we tend to just see them as a fashion accessory unless they're like the big, heavy, knitted, wintertime scarf. But when, I went to the Middle East, they use a lot of big scarves to help protect from the heat. And of course, you think, putting more clothes on in the heat, but it works. And, when we were in Asia, people would go out in the wintertime and just put on a scarf and gloves and they'd be comfortable. And of course, I'm looking for a parka because winter is parka weather, right? But you get used to it and you realize that it's, a big coat is okay, but things like vests and scarves, you can really fine tune that feeling of temperature and keep the heat off you and things. And it feels good, right? I like it too.
Yeah, it's just like I said, it's like a hug on your neck, and it's always kind of there. It just feels so. Yeah, it's a comfort. Yeah, I really enjoy it.
I have a confession. When I was looking for those, I was digging through boxes of things that I put away when I got sick. Of course, gained all that weight, and so I couldn't bear throwing things out like the ascots, so I had to keep them. And I found a bunch of wonderful old bow ties that I can now wear. So maybe next show or the next one, I'll wear a bow tie for you. But yeah, maybe not with my T-shirt. Yeah, but there's actually a company in the U.S. that if you have an old silk tie, they'll make a bow tie out of it for you. Like if you don't want it, or if it gets stained. Yeah, sometimes, if you're a gentleman of the persuasion that can afford very nice ties, sometimes a tie is $300, $400, $500, $600, and you get something on it and you can't take it out.
Whoa!
Then getting a bow tie made.
Wait a minute. How much is this ascot worth that you have given me, Mr. Sweetman? How much is that worth?
No comment. It's vintage, so it's got no price, my friend. No price. Vintage stuff. It's only in the eye of the beholder. Only in the eye of the beholder.
Your
vintage
generosity is overwhelming. Your generosity.
No, but I can't. They're too short for me now because I have my extra weight. So, but I'm losing it. Was my whole point of telling you about the bow ties is that I'm getting back there. So
nice. All right, I understand where we're going with this. When you're at the right weight again, I shall return these beautiful ascots to you. Okay.
No, those ones are yours, buddy. I have a few other ones. Yeah, I'm keeping.
Well, I'd be fine to return these when you are ready to wear them, and I look forward to the day that I'll see that on your neck. That would be sweet.
We talk a lot about the man box, and in North America, men don't give other men clothes, especially intimate clothes that they've worn already, right? Like that's, I'm sure my grandfather or father or somebody's rolling over in their grave because I'm talking about scarves and wearing them with my boyfriend on on the computer.
Okay, so we're
But
weirding people out now. Is that what you're saying, Scott?
yeah, well, no, I think that it is very much culturally. I don't know. It's part of that man box where men just don't,
True.
share or talk about those things, and
That
it's
just shows.
unfortunate.
That just shows how we are trying to escape from the man dog. We're okay with being out there and being affectionate with each other. That's all right with us. So
Yeah, I know that people find out that I'm weird and collect haberdashery, tie clips, cufflinks, things like that. And I've had some really important men in my life give me cufflinks and tie bars and things, and they mean a lot to me. Like they're a wonderful gift because it's something that they've worn. Or it's like I have a really expensive watch, and then I have an everyday watch. And if you ask my daughters which watch they want the one I wear every day, because
it
that's
means
the
something
one
to
they
them. Yeah, yeah,
associate with me, right? Yeah.
yeah.
and,
That's
and
beautiful.
so yeah, I think that men miss out on that, or we're getting better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
Have you
speaking of men and their emotions, my bride Corolla, she said, "Oh, you have to watch this show on Netflix, Hector and the Pursuit of Happiness. Have you seen it?"
No, is it good?
Oh, amazing good. We didn't have time to actually watch it one sitting. We broke it up into 3 parts, and we just watched the
Wow.
last part like at 4:30 or something. Hey, we're here. Let's watch it, right?
Well, let's watch this. Yeah.
Oh man, I bawled. It was an amazing show. It's definitely worth the watch. It was an incredible movie, and it's just basically about the lessons he learns in pursuing happiness, and how, like, he comes to the realization he's taken a lot of things for granted, and and it's a beautiful, heartwarming story. I mean, the whole thing. So
Wow.
it's got some scary, ugly things happen in it, but overall it's just, well, every story, every life has, ugly and scary things that
Scary, ugly things in it. Yeah.
that happens. Like we all
Yeah.
have that. We will have it, right? But overall, the whole experience, and that's actually the point of the movie, I think, is that at the end, this brain researcher is kind of doing this brain research, and at the end, he's looking for happiness, and here it lights up in this little part, or this little part, and this little part, and in his brain, the Hector's brain, like everything lit up. All the experiences were happy, all of them, right? Whatever he
Oh,
experienced
wow.
was what made him happy, right? Because that was part of his journey. That was the necessary things he had to do. So beautiful movie. If you're watching it, Hector in the Pursuit of Happiness on Netflix, incredible show.
I really want
Okay,
to see it now.
yes, but before you jump off and get on the Netflix, Scott, let's do this show, okay? Tonight.
Okay, sorry, Al.
Yeah,
I took
please.
us down the rabbit hole again. That'd
I
be
think
a good name for a show. We'll call it Down the Rabbit Hole with the
yeah, that one
acapellas and Scott. So
exactly.
yeah. Okay, so tonight we're talking about cycles, right? The cycle of hope and the opposite of that. And sometimes people articulate that to be disappointment. Some people say disillusionment, unhappiness, right? And in talking to people, and you and I talk to a lot of people, and we're always, trying to help people feel more hopeful and happy and self-fulfilled and activated in their lives. People say, I feel that way, and then I don't know what happens, but I kind of crash. And then, everything gets dark, and I don't know if I'm depressed, or I don't know if there's something wrong with me, but and then I hit rock bottom and something happens, and and then I start crawling back out of the hole and start getting a little bit of hope again, and I'm just getting up there, and I feel like I'm gonna have a breakthrough, and then crash. And when you talk to people, everyone's experienced that cycle of really, really, I'm getting there.
You with your health challenges more than most, right? Like,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
I would suggest that would be the case, that like the challenges in my life where I've had, I thought I got this and now it's not. And then I tried this and then it's not, which I have all my little bullshit stories to tell, but it's always a little bit of money and a little bit of time that it cost me. In your case, it's like, pain and discomfort and, that kind of a thing. So it's a little bit different context.
Yeah, sure. But there's lots of people that have far worse, and what we're talking about tonight is how you can interrupt that cycle, because doing a lot of research, and I know from my personal experience and talking to other people and yourself, is we get in these cycles of, hope and positivity, and then we crash, and then we hope and positivity, and then we crash. And often it's that crash is a feeling of failure, or a feeling of, everything is awful, I can't do anything, and you and I are at an age where society is saying, well, your value to society is going downhill, right? Like I've heard since I was a kid that middle age was this hill that you sort of hit, and then it was all downhill from there, right?
Yeah.
You've heard that, but
Heard it.
the truth is, half your life is spent in that last half of your life, right? So however long you live, the last half of it is the last half of it. There's nothing that says that has to be downhill. So we get this idea in our head that, and then that becomes self-doubt, and it becomes our internal dialogue and all of those things. So
can I just interject one thing too? Same kind of a concept with, I was watching this panel of doctors, beautiful panel of doctors talking about how you take care of yourself, that kind of thing. And basically, what they were getting to is that these things in your future are not, you don't have to have this. You don't have to have heart disease. You don't have to have arthritis. You don't, like, there's some exceptions, but overall, these are very learned people who'll be able to say, if you make these changes now, you don't have to take this drug for your life, the rest of your life. You don't have to deal with this pain, right? And I think it's so beautiful because it's, the same kind of a concept, right? You have a cycle. Well, if you change that pattern, that cycle, what positive result or negative result, depending on how you change that cycle, are you going to get to, right? That's what you're getting at, right?
Well, all addiction is a cycle, right?
Yeah.
And addiction is not just drugs and alcohol. It's behavior, right? And we all get addicted to a cycle of behavior, and we consider that normal, because a cycle, and I had a great picture of it up here, and I don't think I can share it, but I can explain it. And
I think
it's
give it a
I've got stuff all over.
Oh,
It's
okay.
actually
That's
not
all right.
even on. It's actually not even on that computer.
Okay. That's fine.
I'm running multiple screens here, so.
I understand.
But it's so there's a stimulus, and then there's an action or a reaction, and then an outcome and a stimulus, and so this cycle just keeps going, right?
Yeah.
And so we build. And I read a great article, and I recommend it to anyone, the Gottman Institute, and their research-based group that focuses on relationships. And a lot of doctors contribute articles to them. They're Gottman.com, GOTTMAN.com. Give a look up, and there's a great article on unhealthy patterns. And when I read this one, I went, oh, I did this to my kids. And yeah, I did. And probably they're going to need therapy, and it'll be my fault. But my parents did it to me, and maybe you did it, I don't know. But it talks about how people learn in different ways, right? Classical learning happens unconsciously. It's when a behavior is paired with some sort of reinforcer, right? This is how Corolla trains horses. It's how we teach kids. It's how that, some behavior has either a good result or a bad result. Basically, that comes down to, do we like the result or don't we like the result? Does it make us feel good, or does it make us feel unhappy? And then we start to associate that result with whatever came previously, right? I think in the 70s, they did some really unethical studies where they terrified a baby with a doll or something, and until they got the baby to associate positive things with the doll, and then they went back the other way and scared the poor little child out of its wits. And then the whole point was to prove the idea that we connect with, when something happens, we connect how we feel with that thing, and eventually we don't even need that stimulus. We just need to anticipate that stimulus, to get that reaction. And it's both physical and psychological. It's a whole mix of things going on, right?
Yes, gotcha.
Okay. And then there's and that's called classical conditioning. And then there's, I'm reading it because I want to make sure I get it right. I was struggling pronouncing it earlier. I kept wanting to call it operant, but it's operant conditioning. And that's learning through a series of punishments and rewards. Okay. And this is important because this is often how we learn from someone else, right? So one, we're learning from, I'm walking along and I haven't picked up the rake and I step on the rake and it whacks me in the forehead, like the old Keystone Cops routine. And then I think, oh, I didn't like that, so I'm gonna move, or walk around a rake whenever I see it, right? That's a kind of classical learning. But if you tell me, hey, Scott, if you cut my lawn, I'll give you $5, and I want $5 so I can go to the movie. That dates us. Couldn't go to a movie for $5 anymore, could you? Then I associate mowing your lawn with something, a reward, right? But if you tell me if I don't mow the lawn, you're going to lock up my bicycle, then that's a negative, right? Or a deterrent. And so that's operant learning. And when we're little, we learn a whole bunch of things intentionally through both methods, right? Mm-hmm. We learn that glowing red color is usually ouchie, don't touch. And, it doesn't matter how many times your parents tell you this. I think everyone out there has touched something hot at least once, if not multiple times, stuck your tongue on something frozen and got stuck there. It's just human nature.
More than once for me. You'd think if you did it once, you'd learn. No, more than once for me. I know that.
Yeah, and it's true with most people that happens. But what creeps in there is a really insidious kind of thing. And these cycles repeat themselves as we're going through it. But often as a parent or a mentor or a teacher or somebody that has influence over children, we do some things that start behaviors and cycles that we don't intend to start. And one of the things that the Gottman article points out is that when parents say, and I want to get this right, where is it here? You really want to do it that way? Are you sure that's the choice you want to make? And this is usually after a child has already made a choice. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, that's not going to turn out the way you hope. But by doing that, what we're planting the seeds of is you make bad choices. Don't trust your own judgments, right? And of course, we don't mean it that way. But I know that, I've said to my girls probably in the last 3 or 4 days, that's really the way you want to go with that kind of thing.
Okay, so like speaking of that, like wouldn't it to have that conversation and just say, can you step through how you think this is going to play out? That wouldn't be bad. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like to have them, if they were willing to kind of expand on why they think it would be, they might in that process discover their own, oh, wait a minute, I didn't think of that, right?
Right. And I'm not bringing this up, and Gottman Institute's not bringing this up to say, oh, all parents are bad. But what they're trying to get us to think about is that statements like that and so many of the things that we do meaning well sow the seeds of self-doubt.
I understand. Yeah, it makes a really good point. I get it. Great example.
And I'm guilty of that as a parent. I'm guilty of that as a friend. And meaning well, not having any desire for that person to feel any stress. But self-doubt and low self-esteem is really something that we all get in our childhood. And it's yes, it can come later, but the seeds are really sown when we're young. And we start that cycle of self-doubt. So what happens is that when we're talking about hope and we're talking about disillusionment or being unhappy, is we're going along okay, right? And there's lots of idioms about this, waiting for the other shoe to fall, right? That, oh, things have been going too good, something bad's got to happen here,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we're conditioned that when things are good, good never carries on forever, right? That's the thinking. And so we
Yeah.
develop this cycle where we're anticipating something going wrong, that we feel
Right.
hopeful, but then there's some little voice in the back of our head says, you're being silly. It's never going to turn out the way you think it is.
Interesting.
You know?
Yeah. 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 I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And so I thought this is a really interesting thing because when we're talking about hope, and I know the conversations I've had with hundreds of people about hope, often, they say, well, but you have to be a realist. Hope is well and good. And it's, great for church and, you know, those kind of things. But you have to live in the real world. You've heard similar things, I'm quite sure to that.
Yeah.
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 And we start to internalize that. All people do. And so even if we're very hopeful, what happens is we get in this cycle of self-doubt, self-destruction, self-sabotaging, and we break the cycle ourselves, right? Because then we start reacting instead of acting. We're reacting to a stimulus that's no longer or was never there, you know.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And when you talk to young people, and I'm certainly was guilty of this and still am if I'm not consciously trying to avoid it. Oh, I have a bad feeling. I think, something's, you know,
Yeah.
I'm worried about this. Things are just going too good. And that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Because you can't control the future. You can
No.
only control yourself and how you feel. So if you're walking around with this, doesn't matter the mask you put on outside, if you're partway through this cycle of self-destruction, self-doubt, self, you know, undermining, then you're going to fall and you're going to sabotage your own hope and your own positivity and your own feelings of self-worth. And there's a gazillion articles about it, and everyone should read them. But the bottom line is that it's a bad habit and it's continually reinforced,
So what
right?
can we do
Because,
about it, Scott?
well, we can break that habit. There's been some really, yeah, really good books written on breaking habits because a tremendous amount of our life is habits. And, we get up every day thinking, oh, today's a new day. The truth is, you're going to do pretty much what you did yesterday and the day before that and the day before that, unless you consciously choose a different path,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah. Hmm.
And so if you're on autopilot, these cycles that have been ingrained in us will take over. And that's part of self-preservation. That's part of our brains are big. The whole research into the development of the human mind is amazing because as our brains get bigger, we actually had an ancestor that had a bigger brain than us, but
Mm. The
feeding
big
it,
conehead ones, right?
yeah,
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 from about
feeding it,
200,000 years ago.
feeding it was impossible. Like it just burned too much energy.
Hmm.
And big brained animals, our brains use calories. I mean,
Our brains right
thinking,
now, what is it, like 2% of our mass and like 20% of the calories we consume, right? Like it's something like
it's
that.
crazy.
It draws a lot of nutrients to keep that brain running. Yeah.
It does. And if we were on all the time, we would break down. Our brains would literally fry. So what scientists believe, don't want to get in an argument with anyone. I'm stating these things as facts because I believe they're facts, and that's backed up by scientific research. If you don't believe it's true, good on you, fill your boots. But the fact is, if our brains don't switch off at times and rely on autopilot, we would self-destruct.
Yeah.
And so our brains rely on habits. They rely on things that we've memorized as a way to move from here to there, right? When you go, when you get up in the middle of the night and use the washroom, again, middle-aged men, we know all about that. we don't have to think about where it is.
No.
We just go when our brains are half asleep. We don't even really wake up all the way, and there's a million examples of that in our lives. But what happens is that not all of those cycles are good. And we all carry in us a damaged child. And I say that because I don't believe that anyone has lived a life so perfectly that there was never periods of self-doubt, or that their self-esteem wasn't undermined by bullying or by well-meaning people saying something as, harmless as, do you really think that's a good idea?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it seems like you're caring, but it does instill self-doubt. So
Yeah.
the way to break these bad cycles is and I love this system. There's a few different ways, and I can post some books, and I've really been looking into this because after my coma, a lot of my brain was temporarily gone. I had to learn to eat again. I couldn't speak. I thought I was speaking, but I was just making noise. Like everyone around me was nodding and smiling, but I wasn't actually speaking. I thought I was speaking, but my brain and my mouth were no longer connected in the same way. Eating, all sorts of tasks, walking. I had to learn again. And part of it was remembering, part of it was learning. But those behaviors are so important to our day-to-day life. They really are. And people talk about muscle memory. If you're into sports, like you and I are in the shooting sports, so much of that, we dry fire, we practice driving out to the target to build those habits into our routine so that our brain can be thinking about what comes next down the course, what else do we have to do. It can focus on problem solving while our bodies are automatically taking care of whatever these other things are. So the first step, and there's a lot of ways, like I said, but I love this way. The first step is, if you identify a pattern in your life that has a bad outcome or causes you to repeat an action that you feel undermines your best life, the first thing you should do is make a record of that pattern. And this is really great because one of the things they suggest doing is, and it's very modern, is use video. Do a blog. Log onto your computer and just talk to yourself in the video and talk about how you see the pattern. What do you think is happening, right?
Great
So,
idea. And it could be, you could be you're writing it in your journal, could be video
absolutely.
as well. But anything, I guess it seems to be about having the awareness of, ooh, this is a pattern, right? This has occurred, right? So now that I'm aware of that, I think that's what you're getting at, correct? Am I following you?
You are, and you can talk to a friend, you can talk to your partner, you can talk to a professional. Like, you don't have to do this alone, but it is something that you can do alone, and it doesn't have to be something that costs you any money. Changing your behavior is a zero cost, almost risk-free way to make your life better. And that's what I absolutely love about this. So make a pattern. And then once you've made a pattern, start looking at triggers. And triggers are a word that everyone throws around these days. Oh, I'm triggered, or oh, we don't want to trigger the snowflakes, or so many different ways. What do you consider a trigger, Al?
Basically, if somebody, the person who is triggered, has some sort of a comment, a perception that leads them to be devalued in some way or feel devalued in some way, that is a trigger to a pattern. And then that pattern is anger, or that pattern is frustration, or that pattern is, whatever that pattern is. But that's kind of the pathway. There's something that occurred in the past. This behavior brings it to the person who's triggered right now and triggers a response.
Perfect explanation. Perfect, Al. Because it was
5-star Google. 5-star Google
5 stars for Al. Acapellist hit that one pow out of the park. Okay. Yes. the way to identify a trigger is to ask yourself, when you feel those things that you describe so eloquently, ask yourself if you're responding to the situation in front of you, or actually, are you responding to an event in the past that's similar to this event, or reminds you in some way? It might be a smell, it might be a sound, it might be any sort of stimulus. But it's really important to identify, because not all triggers are bad. Some triggers
Nope.
can save your life, right?
Sure.
So they're there by evolution. They're there to protect us.
Okay. Would you call this a trigger? I think it is. You hear a song and that song means something to you and it takes you back to a memory, this special memory, your grad night. That was a song that was on at grad. I don't think I went to grad, but no, I did not. But anyways, that's, you know what I'm saying? So would that be a trigger as well, but kind of more in a positive cycle that you have that memory?
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah.
And so and that's why, when we started this, it has to be, you have to believe that the outcome is negative to you, or
Right.
the people around you, right? And I say to you, but obviously if you're hitting other people or hurting other people, that's a problem too. So
Sure.
I'm not saying it, but
It
if it
still
makes
would
you
be
feel,
harmful. It would still be harmful to the person using violence as well, right? Like
oh,
the person
absolutely, yeah,
experiencing violence harmful, but the person using violence, it's harmful as well. No question, right? So
right. So, but in step two, you really look at, am I responding to what's right in front of me? Am I sensing danger? Or is it a past event that I associate with negatively, and I'm responding to the past event, and that's a trigger, right? So if
yeah.
something is like, if you jump back from a loud noise, that's not a trigger. That's
No.
an automatic response to a threat, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if, like you said, if you hear a song and you start to get really uptight and nervous because that song was always on the radio when,
X bad
your
thing
favorite,
happened. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
something bad happened. Thank you. I was trying to think of an example that I could use on the airways, but yes, something bad happened. That's a trigger, because, if you hear that song and all of those emotions and that fear or pains come back to you, you're not responding to that moment in front of you. You're responding to a previous event that had a negative outcome.
You know what? You kind of inspired a little insight for me. You say if this makes sense to you. I get what you're saying. It makes really good sense, right? There's something in your past that now is triggering you today that this event today has nothing to do with what happened in the past, but that's how you're reacting, right? In the
Yeah,
same way, if that is what you expect is going to happen in the future, that is worry. Right? This same pattern is
absolutely.
going to repeat. This same pattern is going to repeat forever. I'm always going to be plagued by this pattern. It happened again, and it's going to happen again, and it's going to happen again, and that's worry, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool.
And that gets us to the title of our show tonight, you know, the cycle of hope to disappointment, or hope to desperation.
Wait, but cycle. Did you say that gets us to the title? Are we just starting? Because we're like 33 minutes in, brother. Like, are
No,
you
no,
just
no, no, no,
wrapping her up?
no, no, no. I'm just saying that's why the title's there, is
Yes.
because, yeah, that
All right.
exactly that process. So now we've learned that we need to record what the cycle is. We've
Yeah.
made a decision whether it's a trigger, or am I just doing the smart thing, getting out of the way of the loud noise, or the vicious looking chihuahua with sharp teeth that's trying to eat my leg, or, those things are not triggers if it's happening in the there and now and you're responding to that event, right? Probably you need to react to that event. So if you're triggered, and this is the hard part, because often this is associated with trauma, and this is the part that I think people may need help with. And this is a good point. If you've identified a pattern of behavior with a negative result to it, and you've identified a trigger that makes you feel very uncomfortable, and you start to analyze why you feel that way, and if it starts to bring back feelings or memories of trauma or things that you don't feel you're prepared to face, don't walk away from them. Get some help to work through them, because if you
And if
walk
there's
away
something
from them,
tonight, if there's something triggered tonight, 211 National call line, talk to a professional, say, hey, I just had this, this is what I'm feeling right now. So, right?
Absolutely, brother.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, so understanding the trigger is part of developing freedom from that trigger, right? And so, because breaking a habit is about understanding how you respond to stimulus that either happened in the past or is continuing to happen now. So, going through that and understanding yourself better is the not the acceptance yet, but understanding how you react to that trigger. Why does this song make you feel scared? Right? The
Mm-hmm.
song shouldn't make you feel scared. What is attached to the song? And maybe you know, maybe you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Our minds are incredibly complex, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes to protect us, they hide things from us,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't remember why we feel anxious when this happens.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could just be that we've created this cycle, as you gave us a great example before. Where you've gotten the habit of believing that things are going to fall apart, and this is going to crash, this isn't going to work, it hasn't worked in the past, it's not going to work this time, the operations are not going to be successful, and you've created that behavior on your own. Recognizing it gives you power over it. If you don't recognize it, you don't have power over it. But
Yeah.
once you do recognize it, you gain power over that, right?
That is beautifully said. The awareness, how important is that, right? That you see that. And then once you see that pattern, go back and kind of review what is causing that pattern, correct that, heal that, feel that. Life gets way better. This is very similar to that Michael, no, Justin Michael Williams. Justin Michael Williams. He has this thing called The Kingdom. And his last sharing was about barriers that we put up, and then it was about patterns. So it's the same kind of thing. We have this pattern that we have developed, and here's how it always ends up. Like, why? And then if you see that pattern, as we're talking here, you address that pattern. Woohoo! You get into a cycle of hope and away from the cycle of despair. Cycle of hope. That's what we want.
We want that. An important thing to remember here is it's not about guilt, and it's not about cultivating shame or guilt, because this can occur
Hey,
with
can I
something
just
you.
can I
Yeah,
interject one thing that
please.
my bride Corolla shared a very interesting insight, I think, that sometimes what we think that as little people, if we were somehow that we have guilt for something that happened to us, it's really not guilt, it's devalued. We feel devalued from what happened to us, right? And then we've never kind of revalued ourselves. Like we were waiting for some adult to say, oh no, that was wrong, you're okay. It's not the adult, that's not them anymore. It's you. You go back to little Scott. You go back to little Alan and say, hey, buddy, you're perfect. There's nothing wrong with you. You're perfectly imperfect like every other human being. 100% human like every other human being. As much right to a happy life and a healthy life as every other human being. So I think do we have more to
Brilliant.
close?
We do. We're still in there, but I agree with Corolla 100%. The thing to remember here, though, and this is really important for everyone, is often we talk about when we're the victim, but we're not always the victim. And sometimes we have to deal with things that we've done where other people have been the victim. And we need permission, and I'm giving everyone permission right now, and I'm sure you'll join me in giving everyone permission to explore that and to get help and to get healthy if that's what's needed, and to realize that the only way to atone for something in the past, because you can't undo it, you can't change it, the only thing you can do is change your behavior. And if you've done something wrong to somebody else in the past, say you're sorry, do whatever you can to make amends, but the biggest thing you can do is make sure that it never happens again by changing who you are and using that lesson to better yourself and the people around you. So I
So
just
if
want to
you are,
warn people.
yeah, that's great, Scott. I just want to point out there, if you're aware of a situation in your life where oh man, I was not a very good human being in this situation, you also have to forgive yourself. We all make
Absolutely.
mistakes. We all fall short. So you have to say, hey, yeah, you know what? I'm going to forgive that person that was, they were not having their best day. I was not having my best day either. I have to forgive myself that behavior. What can I learn from there and move on, right? And just come back to where you fully value yourself and don't think yourself something less because of an incident when you were less than your ideal self, right?
And it's so important at this stage, because if you start to let the guilt or shame take over, then you're never going to break the cycle. And that
Right.
shame and guilt, and often when we feel shame or guilt, we do things that have bad outcomes for us or other people, right? If we're being motivated by shame or guilt or self-doubt or self-loathing, we're going to hurt ourselves more, and we're going to hurt other people more, right? So
Scott, you know what? I'm going to share this with you next week, because there's this beautiful book that I'm actually studying on Tuesday nights with Diane and Corolla, and this beautiful book about healing. And she has like maybe about a 3-paragraph thing that you read that and say, oh yeah, this is a universal experience. We've all had this. We're all in the same situation in this regard. So not now, because we're kind of long already. I'm going to shut up and let us finish. But
we
that's
have
for
4 minutes. I'm watching.
Okay, good.
I'm watching that. But just so the final sort of part of that is developing a hypothesis about why this happened, when it occurred, and why you feel the way you do. And this is a good point. If you need help, get a therapist involved. And the reason for that is it explains the reaction. Like if you go back and think, yeah, when I was a kid, my mom and my grandmother died really close together, and still today funerals freak me out. And whenever I'm around death, I get really negative, and I have trouble breathing, and I feel that's a hypothesis about what's happening. And if you develop a hypothesis, it's a really good idea to talk that over with a professional. Sometimes you don't need that. Sometimes you can say, okay, I'm self-sabotaging here. I keep waiting for something bad to happen whenever things are going good, so I make that bad thing happen. Or some little thing that I would normally take in stride and just keep going, I blow into something really big because I'm expecting something negative to happen. So I give up,
Right.
to avoid that big blowout, which was never going to be there anyway.
Yeah.
So that's the hypothesis. And then the last step of that is to be really honest with yourself and asking yourself, is holding on to this pattern of thought and behavior of value to me?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it hurting me and the people I love and care about, or just innocent people around me? Because sometimes we hurt people we don't even know, simply by not being conscious that our actions are negative or destructive, right?
Very true.
It's like an alcoholic who has a car accident and kills somebody. They certainly did not start that evening to go out and kill somebody. Yeah, exactly. That may, and I'm not saying it's not their fault, but I am saying that often our patterns of behavior, if we can accept that it's negative to us and it's hurting us and people we care about, or people in general, or our pets, or the memory of people we love or care about, that often will give us enough power to break that cycle and say, when I start, and that's why in the beginning you record the pattern so you can recognize it, so you can go back and look at it and say, okay, is this happening again? What did I write down here? What are the signs of me getting in this negative cycle?
You know what? Just if I can interject one thing here too. We're talking about how having the service of a professional if you need it, and encourage you to do that. But the awareness part, the professional can't help you with that. You're the only person who can help you with the awareness to see that. And then once you might have help from somebody who says, you say this happens, and then they say, well, have you, and help you explore what that is. But the awareness, it's all you have to do it.
Well, and a lot of times, and I'm fully supportive of professional help, and sometimes that's the only way through it, and sometimes unprofessional help, a loved one, your buddy, somebody that listens to you, a group on the internet of anonymous people can be helpful. Sure. But sometimes many times, in fact, if we go through the process of organizing our thoughts, recognizing a pattern, recognizing the origins of that pattern, the conditions of that pattern, developing a hypothesis about why it occurs, and then making a decision whether it affects us negatively or positively, we can change our own behavior. And we have tools then to recognize the beginning of that cycle when we can say, whoa there, I am not going to self destruct here. I'm going to take it as it comes, and I'm going to keep my hope, and I'm going to keep going. And if it does fall apart, at least I'm going to know that I didn't sabotage it, and I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep my hope alive and keep pushing forward.
Beautiful. So the steps to get to the cycle of hope: give it a go, be aware, then go look and say, hey, why is this pattern reoccurring? And address why. And life will get way better. Scott, it's been a pleasure. Been a pleasure. Oh, sorry, you had something to add? I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that it really is not difficult. Just follow those steps. And I know that my personal life, the first one, recording that pattern in some way, and I've got another book that I'm reading about activating your second brain, about keeping records of things to help you recognize things, patterns, and behaviors. We'll talk about later. But I know that's been a big help to me, and I recommend that to everyone.
Perfect. Thanks for joining us, and come see us next week, next Thursday, 7 o'clock. If you have feedback for us, shoot me a text or give me a call. That's my number right there. Do you want to come on the show and chat with us? Maybe we'll do that. Okay, keep yourself well.
You too. Take care, my friend. Goodbye, everyone. From the Acapellist and Scott Sweetman, have a great evening and a great week.
Do, 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 do.